Lilly, the best performing stock in the S&P today, up nearly 4%. The company announcing it is raising the list price of its blockbuster diabetes drug Mounjaro in the UK. President Trump has been pressuring Big Pharma to get U.S. drug prices more in line with the rest of the world, most favored nation status. Let's bring in Dr. Kavita Patel, who's an NBC News and MSNBC medical contributor. She served in the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs and Public Engagement under President Obama. Dr. Patel, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Is this just the first in terms of the effort by Big Pharma to raise that price around the world, to sort of narrow that gap between prices here and prices overseas?
Yeah, Melissa, I think you're seeing this. This was part of an act kind of issued by the administration in the form of a letter to 17 of the large manufacturers, with Eli Lilly being upfront with an addressed letter to the CEO. So I think you can tell that Lilly doing this isn't shocking, and I think that we'll see more to come. I do think a lot of what's happening in the background is being able to leverage this trade-off in price and this rebalancing in the UK and in the EU, for also being able to guarantee that they can be at the table to negotiate some sort of demonstration or some sort of program around Medicare. Remember, the United States is their big market, and having that share in both Medicare and Medicaid is everything for drugs like Mounjaro. So this is important, and I don't think they'll be the only one that we see.
Dr. Patel, it's Tim. Always great to have you. And I guess let's shift the focus back to the Orpho news and the sense that this might have been their Novo moment. What's the market's reaction here? Is it an overreaction? And again, it's really looking at long-term kind of targets on revenues. In the short term, nothing really changes. I'm just trying to get your sense on, was this an overreaction? Because there's even a sense that some of this GLP trade, because traders are looking at stocks that have done almost nothing, and now that Lilly's really kind of had their Novo moment, that this trade's over.
Right. I do think that the Orpho news, like, even though that it wasn't quite what we had expected it to be, it was still seen, interestingly enough, by the clinical community as a win, because it offers like an oral option. So I do think, the way the stocks reacted on the release of that news, but now kind of combined and paired with at least Lilly signaling that they're going to do everything that they can to kind of keep the global market and to keep that in play. I do think that this is where I wouldn't have projected kind of the, 4%. I wouldn't have kind of put it at that level of kind of opinion around how to expect that news out of the UK today, to be honest with you. So I think some of us are trying to understand, is this really just about this rebalancing, or is it a little bit of catch up on, hey, now there's been some positivity after Orpho. There's some really interesting momentum. There's this hype about the obesity AI deal. Could that be playing into part of it? Because AI is also having its moment in drug discovery. As much as I think that might pop at some point, this is still kind of the game that they're playing. And Lilly is doing a great job of delivering on clinical results. And I think that's part of what's catching up. But the markets, some markets are not necessarily responding on clinical data as I would have expected it to. So to me, this is a signal that they're sitting at the table negotiating some demonstration and doing something with Medicare, and that's going to be big.
Yeah, just to get back to the Orpho data, Dr. Patel, the full readout's going to be next month, and I'm wondering, as a clinician, what are you going to be looking at specifically in that readout that might, confirm your view that this was not a disappointment? Because the investment community takes a look at the weight loss numbers and also takes a look at the discontinuing rates, and they are disappointed.
They are. So I'm going to be looking at more details around kind of the discontinuation rate as well as kind of the side effects. Because remember, in the clinical realm, everything that we're seeing are discontinuations largely because of either side effects and or cost. And so we haven't heard anything. We're not going to hear it next month either, Melissa, around costs around the oral drugs. So I don't expect that to come out. But I do think we're going to see much more detailed data around how the different. And we also did hear a little bit about some of the differences in the cohort on the dosing. And we saw that max dosing got you pretty darn close to the injectable. So I'll want to see the breakout by clinical groups. I'd want to see, remember, this is a group that did not have diabetes, but they had other comorbidities. I'd be very interested in seeing if there's a pattern with some of those other comorbidities, and then the detailed side effect profiles. Because if we can even see, Melissa, an even incremental lower side effect profile, not the discontinuation rate, but even a slightly statistically significantly lower side effect profile with a drug like Mounjaro that's already had a decent side effect profile, that just makes it an even more compelling argument. And then again, the last remaining variable that we won't get is cost. But I think everyone's anticipating that the cost, because of supply chain issues and how we make these drugs, will not be as high as the injectable, but that remains to be seen.